I remember standing outside a small chapel during a particularly violent summer storm. Inside, a man was kneeling, his eyes squeezed shut, whispering a prayer with such raw intensity you'd think the heavens had no choice but to listen. He was asking for his business to be saved, for a sign that someone up there was looking out for him. He had this look of absolute certainty, as if he were placing a direct call to the CEO of the universe. But as I watched him, a bolt of lightning struck a transformer a block away, plunging the street into darkness. The storm didn't pause for his amen. The wind didn't die down out of respect for his devotion. It was just atmospheric pressure and electrical discharge doing exactly what they've done for 4 billion years. The man's face fell for a second, a flicker of doubt crossing his eyes as the lights went out, before he doubled down and started praying even louder. It was a striking scene, the sheer staggering weight of human hope crashing against the total silence of the cosmos. We love to believe we're the protagonists of a grand divine drama that every whisper is logged in its celestial ledger. We've built entire civilizations on the idea of gods who reward the faithful and take an active interest in our daily dramas. But if you look at the data, the universe seems remarkably busy with other things. Black holes devouring galaxies, stars exploding in the silent vacuum, and tectonic plates shifting with zero regard for who's standing on top of them. That man's conviction was beautiful, in a way, but it also felt like a massive misunderstanding of the room he was in. It made me wonder, what if our prayers aren't being ignored because we aren't worthy, but because we're shouting into a void that doesn't even know we exist? H.P. Lovecraft once suggested that the truth of our place in the universe is far more uncomfortable than any demon, not because the universe is evil, but because it is utterly, terrifyingly indifferent.
Wow. I mean, that is a profound and pretty unsettling image to begin with.
It really is.
But it just cuts right to the heart of the mission for this deep dive, doesn't it? That story encapsulates the exact tension we're exploring today.
Yeah, that collision between the human demand for meaning and narrative,
and what the source material here calls the apathetic universe. It's that feeling of looking up at the stars and waiting for them to blink back.
Only to realize they're just, burning gas balls millions of light years away. And to help us get our heads around this, we have a really dense, fascinating stack of sources today.
We really do.
We're looking at philosophical essays breaking down H.P. Lovecraft's Cosmicism, and then we have a transcript of Max Weber's famous sociological lecture on disenchantment.
And on top of that, some very heated Reddit discussions analyzing the decline of architectural beauty.
Which is a surprisingly deep rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And then finally, some personal narratives from people who have, stared into that void and found something other than just despair.
Right. And the central conflict we're going to trace through all of these different documents is what I've been thinking of as cosmic indifference versus the lost sovereignty.
Okay. I like that. Unpack it for us.
It's essentially the history of an idea. It's the story of how humanity went from believing in, architects, as one source puts it, these beings who managed the rain, ensured the harvest, watched our moral behaviors.
Right. The CEO of the universe that the man in the story was praying to.
Exactly. From that to realizing that we are, for all intents and purposes, orphans in a cold, mechanical universe.
And while that sounds like the prelude to a very depressive episode, the sources actually suggest that this realization might actually be good news.
It sounds counterintuitive, but yeah, there's a path to liberation here.
But before we can get to the good news, we have to understand the diagnosis. And the diagnosis. It starts with the physical world around us. We aren't starting in some dusty philosophy textbook. We're starting with the skyline of your city.
Which is often the best place to start. I mean, architecture is never just about shelter, is it? It's the physical manifestation of a civilization's inner life.
It's what one of the sources calls the diary of a civilization etched in stone.
That's the perfect phrase for it.
So let's unpack this diary. I want to direct your attention to a Reddit discussion we pulled from the source stack. The thread had this really provocative title. Architecture itself testifies that man has lost the will to exist.
I mean, that is a dramatic statement.
It's a huge statement, but the user breaks it down by contrasting the past and the present.
Okay, so let's look at the past first, according to this source. They point to the stone churches of Europe, the intricate arched bridges, or even the colonial homes in places like Charleston, South Carolina.
And when you look at these structures, what do you see? I mean, the argument is you see reverence. You see an obsession with detail. Hand-carved gargoyles, cornices, materials chosen specifically because they would weather the centuries.
They were building with an assumption of permanence. That's the key.
They were building for their great-grandchildren. The argument is that they were so certain of their place in the world, of the meaning of their lives, that they etched it into stone.
Even the graveyards, as the source notes, were places of this haunting beauty. They were gardens of stone meant to testify that the lives buried there mattered.
It was a physical assertion that human life had weight and dignity.
And then the source just pivots hard to the present day.
Yeah.
And the contrast is, well, it's stark.
Stark is the word. The user describes modern architecture as gray, cheap boxes with no soul. And my favorite line, glass coffins that scrape the sky.
Glass coffins. That is such a visceral image, isn't it? It captures that feeling you get when you're in a generic business district. All reflective surfaces, steel, concrete.
And the source argues that modern man builds for haste. We build for profit. We don't build cathedrals. We build strip malls and, mixed-use developments that are designed to be depreciated assets.
We build to flip the property, not to house a legacy.
Exactly. And it creates this sense of transience. The source points out a psychological irony there.
Which is?
When modern people want to experience beauty or feel a sense of connection, they don't go to the new financial district. They buy a plane ticket to Europe to walk through the ruins of people who died 500 years ago.
We're tourists in the past because our present feels sterile. That's a powerful idea.
And the expert in the thread drove a really heavy conclusion from this. They argued that if we truly cherished existence, if we believed our lives were part of some grand divine narrative, we would build things meant to last forever.
But because our cities are, as they put it, monuments of fatigue, apathy, and greed, it proves we've internalized the idea that we're temporary.
We don't believe in the forever anymore, so we stopped building for it.
And there's a specific architectural style mentioned in the deep dive material that really anchors this point, isn't there? Brutalism.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
Concrete bunkers. I think every college campus and government center built in the 70s has at least one of these massive gray blocks.
Yeah, exactly. Raw concrete, massive forms, tiny little windows. The source argues that brutalism is the architecture of a species that has given up on charm.
It strips away ornament as if beauty were an unjustifiable luxury. It feels defensive, like a fortress, not a home.
And the historical context here is key. This style really took hold after World War II. The argument is that a civilization that has just witnessed the atomic bomb and the Holocaust, it just loses its confidence in transcendence.
You stop trying to reach heaven with delicate spires because you've just seen hell on earth.
So you start building bunkers. You build for endurance and control, not for glory.
However, we do have to look at the counterpoints. The source material is very good about this. It's important to balance this aesthetic critique with, economic reality.
We can't just say old architecture good, new architecture bad, without acknowledging how those old buildings actually came to be.
Right, there's the survivorship bias point. The source reminds us that we look at Notre Dame and think, wow, the Middle Ages were so beautiful.
But we're only seeing the stone structures that survived. The common folk lived in mud huts and wooden shacks that rotted away or washed away in the first big rain. We don't see those.
And then there's the labor argument. This one is crucial.
Yes. We cannot build cathedrals today in the same way because, thankfully, we don't use slave labor or, underpaid peasants who are forced to work for the glory of the church or the king.
Modern labor laws, safety standards, fair wages, they make that kind of meticulous, hand-carved grandeur prohibitively expensive.
We traded the gargoyles for human rights, which is a trade I think we'd all take.
Oh, absolutely. And there's the vanity argument as well, that those beautiful old buildings were often just vanity projects for the elite.
Right. One commenter in the source material recalled a professor shouting, "Remember the horror," whenever they showed a slide of a beautiful ancient palace, reminding the students of the suffering behind the stone.
But here's the synthesis, and this is where the source makes its strongest philosophical point. Even if we accept all the economic and ethical reasons for the shift,
the aesthetic result remains the same. The shift in our skyline reveals a shift in our worldview.
That's it. We no longer see our buildings as offering a connection to the divine or the eternal. We build for the now because, deep down, we are less certain that there's anything beyond the now.
It's like we've moved from living in a temple to living in, a temporary housing unit.
And that feeling of temporary existence, of being small and fleeting, that leads us perfectly into the next layer of our deep dive. We're moving from the physical buildings to the philosophy that explains why the universe feels so cold.
We are entering the territory of H.P. Lovecraft, the philosophy of Cosmicism.
Now, most people know Lovecraft for the monsters, right? Cthulhu, the giant squid-faced guy from the bottom of the ocean.
Right.
But the source material really emphasizes that the monsters were just metaphors. Cosmicism isn't about scary creatures hiding in the dark. It's about the nature of reality itself.
It's the idea that there is no divine presence and that humans are absolutely, utterly insignificant in the intergalactic scheme of things.
And we need to clarify a common misconception, one that the sources point out. People often interpret Lovecraft's universe as being evil or malicious, like the universe is actively out to get us.
But Cosmicism argues something far more disturbing. It's not evil, the universe is indifferent.
This is where the anti-analogy from the source comes in, and it's brilliant.
It really clarifies it. The source asks you to imagine you are walking down the sidewalk and you step on an ant.
Yeah.
When you do that, you aren't acting out of hatred for ants. You didn't wake up that morning planning to murder that specific ant. You aren't punishing it for its sins.
I just didn't see it.
You simply didn't notice it. You are operating on a scale of existence so vastly superior to the ant that its life or death is completely and totally irrelevant to you.
And in this analogy, humanity is the ant.
Exactly. To the cosmic forces, the black holes, the entropy, the great old ones in Lovecraft's mythos, we are the ant. They aren't evil, they just don't care.
And that is somehow worse than them hating us.
It is.
If a god hates you, at least you're important enough to be an enemy. You're on the radar. You have a role in the story, even if it's the antagonist.
But Lovecraft describes a universe where we are completely beneath notice. The source details a character called Azathoth to illustrate this point.
Right, Azathoth. He's the ultimate symbol of cosmicism. Lovecraft calls him the blind idiot god.
He sits at the center of the universe, bubbling and churning, creating and destroying realities to the beat of chaotic drums. But he's blind and an idiot. Not because he's stupid in a human sense.
But because he lacks intent. He lacks consciousness.
He represents the real universe. Blind physics, nuclear fusion, chemical reactions, heat death, all of these immense, powerful processes that have no mind behind them.
It's the universe of quantum mechanics and entropy. It creates galaxies and destroys them, but there's no director. It just is. And to really drive home how small we are in the face of this blind idiot god, the source brings up the horror of scale.
And the data point here is just staggering. It says we exist on a planet that is B.0000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000
that.
And that is the point. The psychological impact of realizing that number is what Lovecraft called cosmic dread. It isn't the fear of a monster under the bed.
It's the fear of the void. It's the realization that our human logic, our morality, our concepts of justice or goodness, they are local inventions. They're like neighborhood bylaws. They do not apply to the rest of the cosmos.
We are a localized anomaly in a vast, dead machine.
So, okay, we have architecture that ignores eternity and a philosophy that says eternity ignores us. Now, I want to bring in the heavy hitter from sociology. We have a transcript from a breakdown of Max Weber's famous lecture, Science is a Vocation, from 1917, and he introduces a concept that fits this puzzle perfectly.
Entzauberung.
Disenchantment. That's the English translation. And Weber's core concept is that as science advances, it explains the how of the world so thoroughly that it eliminates the mystery.
And the source uses a great analogy for this, the streetcar analogy. Yes. So Weber draws a comparison between a savage, his term for a pre-modern man, and a modern commuter. The pre-modern man knows his tools intimately. He knows how to chip the arrow, how to build the hut, how to track the game.
His survival depends on his direct relationship with his world.
But the modern man riding a streetcar, he has absolutely no idea how it works.
I certainly don't. I mean, I know it runs on electricity, but I couldn't explain the mechanics of the motor or the power grid. Not a chance.
But you count on it working. And more importantly, you assume that if you wanted to know, you could find out. The belief is that, in principle, everything can be calculated.
There are no mysterious, incalculable forces like spirits or demons pushing the car. It's all mechanics.
And because we use technical means to master the world, we no longer need to implore the spirits. We don't pray for the streetcar to move. We pay a fare.
And the result, Weber says, is that the world loses its spark. It becomes a causal mechanism, not a magical realm.
And the source makes a really interesting distinction here between the unknown and the unknowable.
Right. There are plenty of things that are unknown to us. I don't know the exact temperature of the surface of the sun right this second.
But it isn't unknowable. We have the tools to measure it. In the modern world, nothing is viewed as mystically hidden or sacred. It's just data we haven't collected yet.
And this leads to what the source calls Tolstoy's question. And this one really hit me hard. Tolstoy asked, "Science is meaningless because it gives no answer to our question, the only question important for us. What shall we do and how shall we live?"
Weber takes that question and applies it to death, and this is where the philosophy gets really existential. For an ancient peasant like the biblical Abraham, life was an organic cycle. You lived, you worked the land, you saw your kin, and you died old and satiated with life.
You had completed the cycle.
But for modern civilized man, we are tied to the idea of infinite progress.
Because there's always a new discovery around the corner.
Yeah.
A new technology, a new medical treatment, a new frontier to explore.
Exactly. The march of progress implies that there is always more to come. So death is no longer a completion of a cycle, it's an interruption of a process.
You die tired, but never satiated, because you know that tomorrow someone will discover something you will miss.
And Weber argues that because death has become meaningless, just a stopping of the biological clock civilized life itself becomes meaningless, we're running a race that has no finish line.
That connects right back to the architecture, doesn't it? We build temporary boxes because we feel like we're just passing through this infinite, meaningless process.
And Weber mentions the trap of intellectualism. He talks about young people feeling like science is this unreal realm of artificial abstractions.
He references Plato's cave allegory, but he inverts it, which is fascinating.
It is. In Plato, the philosopher leaves the cave of shadows, sees the sun, the truth, and is enlightened. But Weber says modern youth feel like enchained cavemen who have seen the sun of science.
And found it blinding and cold and sterile.
And are desperate to get back to the shadows. They want the illusions back because the illusions were warmer. They want the blood and sap of true life, not the cold formulas of physics.
Which brings us to a really fascinating academic paper we found in the stack. It's about negative mystics. And it connects Lovecraft directly to this idea of religious mysticism.
This is such a paradoxical concept. I mean, usually when we think of a mystic like St. John of the Cross or Teresa of Avila, we think of someone who prays, meditates, and eventually breaks through the veil to encounter ultimate reality.
And for them, that reality is God. It's fullness, love, connection that fills them with meaning.
But the source argues Lovecraft's characters go through the exact same process. They investigate, they peel back the veil, they encounter ultimate reality.
But because the reality is cosmicism,
the result is inverted. Instead of fullness, they find emptiness. Instead of salvation, they find damnation. The truth at the bottom of the universe isn't love, it's non-meaning. They are negative mystics.
And this explains why, in Lovecraft's stories, ignorance is the only path to salvation.
Precisely. The source points to the novella, At the Mountains of Madness. The narrator, Dyer, he isn't writing a gospel to spread the good news. He is writing a warning. He is saying, do not go to Antarctica. Do not dig up these ruins.
He wants to suppress the truth to save humanity's sanity.
He's the opposite of a missionary. A missionary wants everyone to know the truth because the truth sets you free. Dyer wants everyone to forget the truth because the truth breaks you.
So our everyday consciousness is what the source calls a safety blanket. We live in this buffer of merciful ignorance. We pretend the void doesn't exist so we can get up and go to work.
And this also explains why Lovecraft is always talking about things being indescribable or unnameable. Critics sometimes call that lazy writing, you know?
Right, he couldn't think of a good adjective.
But the source defends it. It says that just as religious mystics cannot find words to describe the beauty of God because it transcends human language, negative mystics cannot find words to describe the horror of the void. It isn't lazy, it's a structural necessity.
They're witnessing something that human language was literally not built to describe.
Right.
So let's recap where we are. We have cities that reflect our transience. We have a universe that is 99.9% lethal and completely indifferent. We have science that explains the magic away but leaves us feeling cold. And we have this idea that knowing the ultimate truth might actually drive us crazy.
I mean, when you lay it all out like that, it does feel like we've painted ourselves into a pretty bleak corner.
It does. But this is where the deep dive turns. We have to look at the final source, those personal stories, to answer the question. So, should we despair?
This is where we move from the diagnosis to the potential cure.
This is the lost sovereignty part. And I want to share the story of Mateo from the source text. Mateo was an elderly man living in a remote village in Spain. His family had believed for generations in the architects, spirits in the mountains who managed the rain and protected the crops.
A classic enchanted worldview. The world was alive with meaning for him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But there was a drought, a record-breaking, devastating drought. So Mateo did what his grandfather did. He climbed the mountain to pray. He was going to beg the architects for relief.
And
When he got to the summit, where the shrine was supposed to be, he didn't find a spirit. He found a discarded, broken weather sensor from decades ago. Just plastic and wire half buried in the dirt.
oh, wow. That image is it's heartbreaking, the collision of the mythic and the mechanical right there.
It is. And he looked at the sky and saw what he described as crystalline silence. In that moment, he realized the architects hadn't abandoned the village. They had never been there. The source says the ancient structures of belief were like a beautiful, empty house.
But look at his reaction. This is the crucial part. He didn't come down the mountain and burn the village. He didn't go mad like a Lovecraft character.
No. The source says he felt a heavy, quiet clarity. That is the pivot point. He realized we are orphans.
And then there's the story of Dr. Eris. She's a neuroscientist mentioned in the source. She knows, scientifically, that the universe is indifferent. She knows Azathoth is real, metaphorically speaking.
But she practices secular prayer.
I love this concept. It's such a pragmatic use of the void. She knows no one is listening on the other end of the line, but she knows that the act of speaking, of ritualizing her thoughts, it changes her own biology.
It lowers her heart rate, organizes her cognition.
She's using the structure of belief without the delusion of the supernatural. She has accepted the mechanics of the universe and is using them to her advantage.
But the real turning point, the aha moment for me in all of this, was the story of Clara in the Arctic.
Yes. Clara, her story brings all these threads together perfectly.
She's up there, surrounded by ice. A very Lovecraftian setting, right? Desolate and cold.
Yeah.
The aurora borealis is going crazy above her. She describes it as looking like the sky was screaming.
And she feels microscopic. She knows the science. It's just solar particles hitting a magnetic field. It's a mindless, lethal, beautiful process.
And in that moment, faced with the absolute indifference of the cosmos, what does she do?
She picks up a satellite phone.
She picks up the phone. She's been agonizing over a career choice and a failing relationship, waiting for a sign from the universe to tell her what to do. And in that moment, she realizes, the universe doesn't care what I do.
And instead of crushing her, it frees her.
It totally frees her. She writes, if the universe doesn't care what I do, then I am the only one who gets to decide.
That is the lost sovereignty. When we believed in the architects or the gods or the fates, we were subjects. We were waiting for orders. We were waiting for permission.
But if the universe is truly apathetic, if Azathoth is just a blind idiot spinning in the dark, then the throne is empty.
And if the throne is empty,
we can sit in it, in a way.
In a way, yes. Not that we control the stars or the physics, but we control our own narrative. The expert analysis in the source reframes the horror as freedom. If there is no cosmic plan constraining us, then we are free to write our own script.
The source makes a beautiful point here. It says, our compassion matters more because it is a rebellion against entropy.
Exactly. Think about that. If the universe naturally tends toward cold, chaotic indifference, then an act of kindness is a defiance of the laws of physics. It's unnatural in the best possible way.
We aren't being good because a god is watching and marking a scorecard.
We are being good because we choose to add warmth to a cold room.
It changes morality from a reward system into an act of creation. We are creating meaning where there is none to be found.
Precisely. We aren't subjects of a divine kingdom. We are sovereigns of our own fleeting lives. We are the adults in the room now.
That's the shift, isn't it? We spend thousands of years acting like children waiting for a parent to fix the roof or stop the storm. And now we look up, see the empty sky, and realize, okay, I guess I have to fix the roof myself.
And while that's scary, I mean, it is always scary to move out of your parents' house. It's the only way to truly grow up. The glass boxes of our architecture might be soulless, and the blind idiot gods of our physics might be indifferent.
But that radical freedom allows us to build our own meaning.
It's a wild journey. We started with a man praying to a storm that didn't care, went through the concrete bunkers of brutalism, stared into the face of Cthulhu, and ended up with a woman in the Arctic realizing she was the captain of her own ship.
It's the journey from the enchanted world to the disenchanted world, and finally to the self-determined world.
So what does this all mean for you, listening to this? It means that feeling of smallness you get when you look at the night sky, you don't have to push it away. You can let it in.
Because that silence isn't a rejection. It's a blank page.
And you are the one holding the pen.
I want to leave you with one final thought. Something to carry with you next time you feel that cosmic dread creeping in. If the universe is truly silent, then every word we speak, every act of kindness we perform, and everything we build isn't just a daily task. It's an act of defiance against the void. The question isn't why the universe won't speak to you, but what you are going to say to it now that you know no one is interrupting.